without whom none of this process would be possible. Special salute to them, because without their leadership, it's highly unlikely that we would be here tonight. Thank you again. My name is Frank McDonough. I'm the chair of the Programmatic Use and Cost Analysis Committee. My family moved out here after World War II, and my 3 other brothers and 3 sisters were all from the Garden State High School, as were our 2 children and eventually our 2 grandchildren. I've been involved in the St. Paul's effort since we moved back out here in 1992. So for 30 years, I've been a witness to the process that we're undergoing. Recently, the mayor asked me to chair the Programmatic and Use Committee, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. This is a conversation that has been over 30 years, but more recently a conversation involving many new residents and a decision, again heroically chosen by our Board of Trustees, to try and bring the St. Paul's issue to a resolution. As Mayor Picato said, we will be talking about facadism, which has many strong attributes, on October 26th, demolition on November 2, and then a subsequent town hall later on in November. The purpose is to make sure that every resident's voice is heard. Without that feedback, none of the plans make any sense. And so that's, at a minimum, what we hope to achieve tonight. Let me talk for a moment about how this works. After I speak, we'll hear from Peter Cole on the Legal Committee, and then we'll hear from our Architectural and Engineering Committee, who will review the process of the adaptive reuse. And then we'll take your questions. We began in January with the mayor's first meeting, and at that first meeting we began the process of studying demolition and partial demolition. And that continued all the way through into June. We also began the engineering review, which was concluded in March after several weeks delay, and we finally got the engineer's report that told the Programmatic and Use Committee that yes, the building was sound and capable of significant adaptive reuse. We then decided that rather than begin a review and a speaking or engagement tour, the better process was to review the last 30 years of resident suggestions so that the newer residents would have a baseline or the same starting point as the rest of the more mature residents of the village. That process, which took several weeks, reviewed every document, every newspaper, every board minute, every survey to discuss what the residents wanted over those 30 years, because those wants have changed. We then presented that in the town hall meeting at the end of June, not as an adaptive reuse, because we hadn't begun that process, but as the process of what the building would look like if any of the historical uses had been committed to. We got enormous amounts of feedback. So the period from January until June was merely a historical review to create a baseline for the discussion that was to follow. We then moved to phase 2. What was phase 2? Phase 2 was an invitation made to the Board of Trustees, to every group in the village, to come visit the Programmatic Committee and meet with us on Tuesday nights and share their thoughts. It was very successful. We heard from athletes, we heard from performing arts, we heard from seniors, we heard from various members of the community, particularly in performing arts. And so our view and our way to update the historical data changed. You'll see that change in the adaptive reuse plans tonight. After tonight, we will begin phase 3. What is phase 3? Phase 3 is an outreach by our committee that will include 3 more town halls for a total of 5. And those town halls, as I said, will address facadism, which we began studying in February and March, demolition, which we began studying in January, and we will present options to the village from professionals as to what the process of partial and total demolition would be and what the use could be behind a facade type of program. So please mark your dates, those dates in your calendar. Tonight we're going to discuss through our engineers and our architects what what we have heard over the last 3-4 months since we began the adaptive use process in June. What we would like to do as well is discuss how the village has changed over the years and how the needs have changed. Because without those changes incorporated into our plan, we will not be successful in either an adaptive reuse or facade reuse of our building. So the conversation that begins tonight will continue through November, and as long as it takes until every voice is heard. Now, what voice will not be heard tonight? We're not going to talk about parking tonight, because parking is something that will be determined after we decide what the use is. We have several individuals who are quite competent in parking, and we promise them that they will be part of this process, because parking and traffic will become an integral part of this. But that's not tonight's discussion. Tonight's discussion is, what have we heard, what are we going to hear, and what can we do next? Finally, I'd like to make sure we are all in agreement that anything we do on an architectural and engineering basis must be affordable. I love architects. I've been involved in infrastructure development for 30 years. I ran the public-private partnership at Goldman Sachs for multiple years with projects all around the country, and our team did over $100 billion worth of these kind of projects. Every architect has a plan, but none of those plans make sense unless the people who are using that facility can afford it. So our promise to you, as the second half of the programmatic committee, is, while we are focused on programs right now, once we finish with all of the listening and hearing your voices, we will begin a cost analysis. The mayor has indicated he would like a cost estimator hired. That's the mayor's prerogative. We will wait for those estimates and begin to determine what is feasible, what is affordable, and what is financeable, and then present those options to you. So the process is multi-phase. Number one, what are the uses that we see? And we're doing that in 3 phases. Number 1, historical. Number 2, listening. And number 3 now, resident outreach. We will then go into a cost analysis and present prices and options to the village to determine which of the many options they may like to pursue. That's our process. Let me give you my phone number in case any of you have any questions at any time. It's 917-691-7782. We are happy to meet with you or any of your groups anytime that's convenient for you. And a special outreach, please, to the performing arts parents and the special needs parents. We've heard part of what your demands and needs can be. We'd like to hear more and in greater detail. I'd like to introduce now Peter Cole, who will talk about the legal limits on the process. And then thereafter, we'll hear from our architect and engineer, who will take you through the plans, and then we'll be open for your questions, and then we'll hear a conclusion. Thanks very much.